What's up, Slick Talkers? This episode is brought to you by our friends at Send Squared. If you are looking for a true hospitality CRM, then you need to go to sendsquared.com today and let them know that Wil sent you. Now, we're on to the episode. Welcome back, Slick Talkers. This episode is a very special one because Tom Goodwin has become not just a podcast guest and an industry friend, but someone who I truly admire and look up to. And in this episode, we talk about how carrying on the business from his in-laws to where they are today and the challenges that he's had to overcome, plus the many things that we're seeing in the industry and the changes that have happened over the last 5 to 10 years. And this episode, we do get open and honest and a little sentimental. So if you like that stuff, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And of course, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate all of the Slick Talkers out there that make this podcast possible. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode with Tom Goodwin. You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. For the love of hospitality, welcome to the podcast, Tom Goodwin. This conversation has been in the making, I would say, a couple months. You just got back from Barcelona and Monaco. Not Monaco. You got back from...
it was southern Spain and Morocco.
Morocco. So you're feeling alive, awake, and enthusiastic for the recording today.
Absolutely. It was a great, refreshing trip.
Yeah, I was going to say before, going into that, what was the highlight? Give me a favorite moment. Give me a favorite experience.
My takeaway was that the trip wasn't a business trip. It was actually a kind of doing a respite and leadership retreat for people that work in North Africa. And so we did that for about 6 days. My wife and I led a retreat, and which is something we just love to do and pour into young people's lives. And then we decided we got an extra week. I've got a big birthday coming up, and let's just unplug and go do something crazy. And so we're in southern Spain in Malaga, and it's a 30-minute flight on Ryanair for $24 to go to Morocco. And so we got some connections in Tangiers. We did go during the end of Ramadan. So that was an interesting experience, cross-cultural experience. But we lived very much in the old city in a very old inn, family-owned for, I think, 14 or 15 years. Got to know the people of the community and went to a cooking class. And I think for us, I came away as a highlight was the experience and experiencing a completely different culture and feeling uncomfortable and being immersed in it and enjoying it. And it's being curious and learning. And Morocco was more than I expected it to be. It was really phenomenal.
I love that. I love it, especially when I love that you said the word uncomfortable, because it's like, this is new and new things aren't always comfortable. It's exciting, but not comfortable. So I'm glad you got a little out of your comfort zone for a little bit of a vacation.
I'm fortunate that my wife is also adventurous in that perspective. And so we kind of thought, we wake up every day and what do we have for us? We don't plan everything out minute by minute, but we really explored and had an attitude of curiosity, and that created a great experience for us.
I love that. Well, it sounds like you and Susan are more than just adventurous when it comes to your vacations. Obviously, going into your story, I'm seeing that you're obviously adventurous and taking over her folks' business called the Mountain Laurel Chalets. For 53 years, this business has been running, and you guys are carrying the baton here. So that's also an adventure in itself. I would love for you to kind of tell us the story of the company and the moment you guys took over to where you guys are today. I think it's incredible what you guys are continuing to build upon.
Yes, we stumbled upon it, as most people do in this hospitality industry, especially within vacation rental management. And I married into the family that founded and started this business, Mountain Laurel Chalets, in 1972. They're pioneers, and we really stand on their shoulders. That was Dot and Ralph Egley, my mother and father-in-law, who were newlyweds, moved to Gatlinburg because they loved Clingman's Dome and Mount LeConte and hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. They lived in Oak Ridge, Tennessee prior to that, and would find themselves every weekend driving 2 hours to Gatlinburg to go hiking and enjoy the park. And so this was in the late 50s. They moved here, and they were the third house on Wiley Oakley Ski Mountain Road. And there were no vacation rentals. There were private vacation homes that people enjoyed a couple weeks out of the year. And as you can imagine, these were pretty eccentric people that had homes many different places around the world. And then they would buy acreage and build a small, modest home. And my parents or my in-laws moved here as an engineer and a general contractor and the first kindergarten teacher in Gatlinburg. That was my mother-in-law. Everyone was taught by Miss Dot in kindergarten. And so they moved here in the late 50s. They rented a house, and I am on the property of the home they rented from the woman who was taking a around the world trip, and her house was vacant. And they were building a house just 2 blocks from here, 500 yards, and if that. And so they lived here on this land for a year while they were building their house. Third house built in this area, which is now known as Chalet Village. There's over 2,000 cabins just within this community right here. The Smoky Mountains in Gatlinburg, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge has about 30,000 rental units, cabins, condos, and homes, chalets. So they were pioneers just in moving here and being adventurous. And then they found that they got involved in the community and knew Wilma Maples at the Gatlinburg Inn and Pauline Huff at the Mountain View Inn. And those were staples. If anyone was coming to Gatlinburg in the 50s and 60s, that's where you stayed. And of course, everything was done through mail or by the phone. So people would show up at the Mountain View Inn or the Gatlinburg Inn, and they were full. And so Wilma or Pauline would call Dot and say, "Can you make any room in your house for this couple? They just showed up and we don't have any room." So my wife and her sister were in a pretty large room with 2 queen-size canopy beds and a private bath with a sliding door to the porch. And so they would get all their stuff out, make the beds. This is, in the mid 60s.
Yeah, I was going to say, talk about trusting. Talk about trusting.
Long time ago. And people would come and stay with them in this part of their home. And then before you knew it, there were all other smaller homes being built around this Chalet Village community. And the owners would ask Dot and Ralph to take their keys and watch after their house while they were gone. No one else was doing vacation rentals or renting out their home. It was friends or family that just stayed in their homes. And when the guests or the owners would come in and it was snowing, Dot and Ralph had a 4-wheel drive. There were gravel roads. They'd bring them their prescriptions. They'd bring them the newspaper, but they'd bring them milk. And they became friends with these second homeowners. And the second homeowners trusted them, gave them their keys, said, "Look after my house." And so by the end of the 60s, they're thinking there might be an opportunity here. And by 1972, 4th of July weekend, they started their business with their first investment property called Mountain Laurel House. And at that point, it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home. And they started to rent it for $25 a night. And at that point, there were 2 other cabin rental companies in Gatlinburg. So they are not the oldest, but they're the only surviving, the oldest surviving company. So they've been doing that since 1972. They put up the sign and decided on the name Mountain Laurel Chalets because of the flower, the mountain laurel, which is indigenous to this area. And we've started taking on other owners of second homes and taking care of their homes, having their keys and allowing for them to earn some income on the side. And of course, that has grown into an incredible multi-billion-dollar market nationwide. But when you look back at pioneers, I don't know how many people were doing this in 1972, maybe a handful. And they have since passed on. And in 2012, the family came to realize that there were some concerns after the 2008, 2009 crash and how we were doing financially and the business was doing, and it wasn't doing as well as maybe the general manager led us to believe it was doing. We started looking at more of the books and realized this needs a bit of a reset. So that was 40 years in. 2012 was the 40th anniversary of the company. And the family asked me to come to the helm and lead the effort. And I thought it was going to be 6 months to 18 months at best to turn the ship.
Yeah.
And we were able to turn it towards profitability within a year, but I got hooked. And so I've been running the ship since 2012, carrying on the legacy. Dot and Ralph have both passed away, and now we have the opportunity and the mantle of responsibility to carry on that heart of hospitality.
All right, Slick Talkers, as you know, this podcast is brought to you by our good friends at Hostfully, and we have a special offer for you today because if you've heard other episodes where we talk about HFM 300 to get $300 off your onboarding with Hostfully, well, we have a better and bigger discount for you. The code is SLICK. 500, where you're going to get $500 off. So we've moved up with Hostfully saying, you know what, we want to make an even better offer for our listeners to jump on the wagon of becoming a Hostfully user. If you don't know what Hostfully is, they are a property management platform that allows vacation rental managers and hospitality enthusiasts and experts like yourselves to streamline their business, to put their properties under one roof, to connect their vendors and other technology softwares into one system, and of course to make their business and operations as smooth as possible to provide hospitality to their guests. So grab that link, grab the code SLICK500 for $500 off your onboarding. And now we're back to the episode. What were you doing before 2012 takeover of Mountain Laurel Chalets? Because obviously that's not an easy decision to say, I'm going to come steer the ship for 18 months and then I'll go back to doing what I was doing.
That's right. I actually took a leave of absence, a 6-month family leave of absence, and I was working for a global religious nonprofit. And I had worked on college campuses. I had worked within cities. And at that point in 2012, I was mostly focused on kind of a national branding, marketing, and messaging of the organization. And so I had organized people, I had led teams, I had worked with budgets, and the family said, I think you're more likely to figure this out. And I was fortunate to be given a leave of absence, which led to a longer leave of absence. And then and eventually my wife and I, after my mother and father-in-law passed away, we divided up the assets of the family and we took on ownership of the business in 2018. And been running it and trying to continue the legacy.
I was going to say it's not an easy decision. That's not an easy conversation. That's not an easy acceptance of a challenge, which running a business, especially pre-existing to you. Can you walk me through what your conversation, you and Susan kind of were talking about during this time? What made you so enticed to say, you know what, this is a business I want to continue down. I think this is something that we can do, continue to pass this down the family. I assume that's your guys's goals. It's been around for 53 years. So now hopefully your kids can take it over, or your grandkids could take it over, et cetera. So I'm just curious, what was that conversation like, and how did you guys come to the decision through such a tough, I don't think that could be easy.
Yeah, I remember the very moment that it struck me that I'm going to do this, and this is kind of a new calling in a sense. I was on a family conference call, which we were having many of them at that time, kind of wondering, how do we as children enter into the parents' business without making assumptions or being entitled, respecting them, but also realizing they're in their 80s. There wasn't a legacy plan. And so how do we move forward? And as I've done a lot of personality tests, temperament tests, and so forth, one that's a very extensive one called the MAP test. Many people wouldn't be familiar with it. It's writing out about 40 essays about your life, and then you have an analysis of your proclivities and your strengths and so forth. And I had done that 10 years previously, and I went back to the consultant that had walked me through that. And I told him about this opportunity. He said, Tom, you were made for this. Remember, in your test, you fix things that are broken. You come and create a calming sense in the midst of crisis and have a vision to reset the ship. I'm not a person, as you were mentioning before about founders, I consider myself a creative, but I'm not a blank page person. I love working off a first draft.
Yeah.
And certainly 40 years in is much more than a first draft. But I saw this palette in front of me and the opportunity for growth, the opportunity to create, and the opportunity to improve it. First and foremost, it was a burden to save it because my in-laws had poured their life into this business.
Yeah.
And unbeknownst to them, it wasn't moving in the direction that they thought it was.
Yeah.
And I thought, I am committed to the family, to this legacy, to continue on this legacy, to continue on the business. And so there was a deeper drive and a deeper why.
Yeah.
And it was to honor my mother and father-in-law, whose lives, it's hard to underestimate the significance of their life in my life, in my wife's life, in her siblings' lives, in my children's life, and now my grandchildren's lives who never knew them, but the ripple effect and the presence of hospitality and service and sacrifice and generosity have permeated our DNA. And so that's a deeper why. And so we thought, let's do this. And I honestly thought, and the consultant I was working on at that time, he said, Tom, this is going to take 6 months. Well, he knew it was going to take 18 to 36 at least.
Yeah.
But he knew I wouldn't say yes to it if it was 18. I was like, I'm not going to leave everything, but for 6 months I can leave. So I get into it for 6 months. First day on the job, I remember it like yesterday. End of June 2012, I walk in and Kay, who's our property manager, works with all the owners. At that point, had been with the company for over 20 years. And I said, Kay, so what did my predecessor do on a day-to-day basis? She said, I have no idea. So there was a lot of siloing in the business. Okay, I think I'll just start from what I know. And I knew about leadership. I knew about team. I knew about culture. I knew about brand. And that's what drove me for those next 6 to 18 months. We turned the ship around. I learned a lot about P&Ls and balance sheets and cash forecasting and trust accounting and not touching your escrow account, all those things that not everyone does. But I'm glad that I learned that on the very front end. So what motivated me was really a deeper why and a deeper call to preserve a legacy and to maintain the integrity of this business, which was more than a business. It was really about impacting people. And what we say, we're in the business of changing lives. And it's one vacation at a time, one family at a time. And when we have that as our pretty grand aspirational vision, we begin to see evidence that we are really impacting people's lives.
Yeah.
And not only our guests, but most importantly, probably our employees, providing a really wonderful, healthy culture, though not perfect, but a place where they come and they feel like they can contribute and they can make a significant difference.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm curious because in 2012, I know you have 2 grandchildren and you have 2 children. How old were the kids at the time when you took over things in 2012?
I have 5 daughters.
You have 5
they were
daughters.
5 daughters. They were aged 8 years old to 18. And you know, they were used to dad being in the nonprofit. I traveled about 3 times a month with that work because I was working on a national level. But I had a lot of flexibility and a lot of priority for the family. And then I move into the firestorm, no pun intended, in 2012 of turning it around financially. We were able to accomplish that easily by 2014. And so our girls really have seen the sweat equity that goes into not only being a vacation rental home owner, but an owner of a management company. So we own homes, and the family own homes, but we also run the business. And so we have they have a really strong awareness of the complexities of the job, the demands of the job, and the holistic nature of this. It's not a 9-to-5 job, as we all know. You pour your life into it. And I think the DNA and the heart, if it doesn't show up in your own life, then there's a disconnect. It's just a job. And for us, it's been more of a calling.
For sure. But I can only imagine being that young of an age, seeing my family step into this, our grandparents' business, to then see the impact that you guys have had. Like you say, like our goal and mission is to change lives, right? Not just to clean toilets and turn over beds and do all the other things, but they get to kind of see that behind the scene, dad in a leadership role, mom in a leadership role. Obviously not always the most perfect season, right? Whereas I'm sure there's times of stress and times of worry, but to get to see that behind the scenes, and now you have 2 amazing grandchildren who are getting to see that, and I'm just imagining the generational impact that your in-laws have created by starting this business, and how your kids are going to get to, not your kids, but your grandkids and their kids are going to see hospitality in action, and to see, something. I think, when you're younger, I'm seeing a lot of my friends who are having kids now, they're teaching them, this is what money is. And this is why, like, hey, we go on vacation. Not everyone gets to go on vacation. And like kind of explaining things that I wasn't explained, as a child. It just kind of assumed, right? Like it became a normal thing. And so I don't know, I'm just thinking in their shoes, how cool it is to get to see this impact generationally carry through hospitality at the core, business and smarts and wits, and of course brand and marketing and hospitality. Yeah, just like so cool. Such a cool experience.
It really is great. And my 5 daughters, my son-in-law, my 2 grandchildren, a third one on the way, are all...
Congratulations.
Thank you. And they're all committed to this. They see the heart and the soul. They understand the legacy, the family desire to continue on generosity, the spirit of generosity, and being involved in more than just a business. Interestingly, my 3 oldest daughters are all CPAs, so they all graduated with accounting degrees and all work in various forms of finance. And I lean into their expertise because it is not my greatest strength. And then my 4th daughter is a journalist and a creative writer and a podcaster. And then my 5th daughter is a piano major. So we have a wide variety of artisans, but they all love Mountain Laurel Chalets. They love bringing their friends. They've hosted student retreats up here in college and in high school. And they've all cleaned houses. They've all done marketing. They've all done social marketing. They've all done reels for us. They've all looked at the books. So there's a commitment that they have at least an interest in the business. And we're really thankful for that.
That's so cool. That's a goal of mine. So I love that you're living it out, living it and breathing it. So it's incredible. Just the impact. I think when you look at your life and measurements of impact, it just changes the way you approach other things, from business to relationships to anything else in between. So that's phenomenal. Tom, I'm curious though. It can't be easy. So you said you're not a start from scratch type of guy. You'd rather have a first draft. What are your thoughts around picking up a business and quote unquote picking up a business from where it left off and carrying the torch to then starting from scratch? Do you think obviously they both have their ups and downs and challenges. What would you say is more attractive to you? Obviously you went down the route of being able to carry this torch and pass this down. But do you think there would ever be a moment, if you didn't take this opportunity, that you would have created something on your own?
I don't know that I would have. I don't. I think I would have dreamed and I would have thought, but to have the unction and the fortitude to do that, and I always am thinking of new ideas, and I do think I'm able to create a lot of new opportunities because I have the privilege and the base of income, of a business, of stability. I'm somewhat risk adverse. My wife is more risk adverse financially. So that's how we're wired. I like to take something that already exists and make it better. And so I have total respect for founders and the leap of faith and the entrepreneurial spirit and really the hard work it takes just to get something up and running. For me, it was hard, and it has been hard work. On a few occasions, we've had to reboot with the company. Fires in 2016, we lost half our business in one night, from 96 properties to 49 properties. And that was a huge reset. But it was an opportunity to solve something and to create something new. Created a lot of new ideas that rest on the shoulders of what I think the vision was of my in-laws as they started this, of what they hoped for and what they wanted. But I do think I have the safety. I'm fortunate and privileged to have the safety to explore new ideas with low risk and fail quickly and to move on. If my livelihood was dependent on starting something brand new from scratch, I would need to know I have a good financial runway to be able to make that happen. Fortunately for us, we've not had any investors, outside investments, no debt as far as the business is concerned. And so that allows us the freedom to grow and to flourish and to fail and to think new ideas. So there's been plenty of opportunities for that. When I came in 40 years in, they had just really gone on the internet, taking credit cards, amazing. The legacy company kind of shuddered to think it started with a fishing tackle box in 1972 and a ledger sheet where everything was written in pencil because you had to erase it. Then when you use pen, white out. And, it was all very high touch, no technology whatsoever. 2 ads a year in Southern Living got all of our business.
Wow.
And we still have people that come back from the 70s and 80s or second, third generations, people that have stayed with us because of that. But gosh, if you weren't ready for change and you're not able to handle change, I wouldn't be able to survive. I thrive on change. I love it. And so since 2012 till now, how many different iterations of change have we undergone as an industry in vacation rentals? And that gets tiring. Sometimes you think, I've tackled it. I think I figured out what, and then it's like, oh crap, something else is, changes it, but then it's a new opportunity to explore and create.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'm seeing the same thing where there's a point in my business last year, end of last year, beginning of this year, where I was like, all right, like we're cool. We're just going to do this. And then you're like, no, we have to create something new. We have to do this new change. We have to do this. You have to, reinvest in this or whatever it may be. So it's a constant, ongoing thing. It's never going to settle too much. And if it does, it's when you should start looking around a little bit and be like, are we sure this is right? So,
and what are the non-negotiables? What are the things that you're willing to die on a hill for and that you're going to go to battle for that aren't going to change because they're never changing human realities of core values that you have to be true to. And technology can change, influence can change, opportunities can change, but they can't really compete with your core. And our methodologies need to change rapidly, but our core values really need to remain the same.
I love that. I love the way you said that. I'm curious because one thing you did kind of get to create from scratch and maybe play around with the safety net that you talk about, which is For the Love of Gatlinburg, your guys' podcast, where you're getting to highlight the destination, highlight the people, you're getting to highlight the stories. And I love what you guys did with this podcast because I think I talked about this in 2018, 2019. Like I was like hotels, business, like short-term rental companies, when I first discovered them, should be creating podcasts to like showcase their destination or showcase their story or, whatever the situation may be. I created I think a 6-episode series for the hotel that I was a manager of. And I got the housekeeping manager to talk about her favorite restaurants. And then I got our maintenance director to talk about his favorite things to do with kids with his kids. And, all these things. And we put the 6-episode series and we had a little QR code just saying, hey, if you're interested, our team put together our favorites of Seaside, Oregon, and would love to hear what you guys think. And we got some good feedback. Not everyone listened to it. It was only around for like maybe 4 weeks before I left, but I don't know if they continued it or not. And it was a fun experience, but you guys got to do this in your own way, showcasing Gatlinburg. And I just think that in itself is such a great example. So I would love for you to tell us the story behind creating of the podcast, why you guys are doing it, or why you guys thought this was the medium to choose out of all mediums from social and email and all the other stuff. But yeah, I would love to hear about the pod.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for the shout out for the love of Gatlinburg. If you just Google Gatlinburg on podcast, you'll find the podcast. And really, it was a response to two things: business and story. And in the last few years, as a lot of 2019ers, 2020s, come on into the market, there are over 100 vacation rental managers in this market with 30,000, and half of them, I don't know what the exact numbers are, probably half of them are doing it themselves and just listing on Airbnb, no website, no company, and more from a distance. And I thought, wow, this is a new market. Obviously, it didn't happen overnight, but how do we compete as a legacy company with 90 some properties? And we're just a drop in the bucket, but we have such a rich story. But even greater than that, Gatlinburg has a rich story that so many of these first-time people coming to Gatlinburg are coming here without an appreciation or an understanding of the history that's here and the people that have made this place. And so, as anyone does, I want to go to a destination, I'm going to go and I'm just going to get an Airbnb randomly. I'm going to go and I'm going to leave. I'm going to go consume. And I thought, I want to create something that would allow for people to linger instead of just consume.
Yes.
And I wanted our brand to stand out as the storyteller for Gatlinburg, because I feel like we're in a unique position as the oldest vacation rental management company with all the stories that we have. But I wanted to give a voice, and you say you exist to amplify other people's voices. And if I could steal that for this, I want to amplify the stories of people in Gatlinburg. So we have just completed season 1. We're starting season 2 in May, and there's 14 stories. The first one is the mayor of Gatlinburg, and we hear his story and how he fell in love with Gatlinburg. And he went from baling hay and mowing lawns to raising a barn with neighbors in this communal little town. And people need to hear that's the mayor's story.
Yeah.
This guy who loves this community. And then Susie Greengold, who's one of our owners on our program, her family lived in the national park, and in the 40s they had to move out and take their homestead out of the national park because it was acquired by the government, and relocate and so forth. So it's hearing Susie's story that when you stay at Far Horizon Lodge at Susie's home, it is 2 old cabins, 100-year-old cabins that were in the national park that were relocated, that we totally renovated and made into a luxurious estate.
That's incredible.
But it's original cabins. So those stories that it's not just come to consume, but maybe you could just linger a little bit. And I will tell you, there are people, it amazes me, in our market, in our company, and our guests that come multiple times a year. Gatlinburg is their second home. 10 times a year, some people will come because you look out at the mountains every day and it's a total different experience. And this is their resting place. This brings up emotions, and it brings a connectedness that they would have. And we just wanted to tell that story. So we have a longtime guest. We have a guest who became an employee who moved here.
Wow.
What is it like you used to be a tourist here? What is it like to live here permanently? Why did you move here? And we have an artisan from the arts and crafts community that came and started his pottery business out here. The city manager, the first woman city manager of Gatlinburg that served for over 20 years. She just retired. What was her story? And so it's not to promote Mountain Laurel Chalets. It's not to promote an attraction. It's not to sell tickets. It has no sponsorship other than this is presented by Mountain Laurel Chalets. And we're not making any money off of this podcast, but I thought we want to tell a story, and we want our guests to listen to these podcasts as they're driving 3 to 4 hours into town. And hopefully thousands of other people will listen to hear these legacy stories. And what we found is that a generation is passing and we haven't captured their stories. So my in-laws had so many stories. I wish we had pushed record. And so that's what we're hoping to do. Everyone from the high school football coach that coached for 35 years at Gatlinburg Pittman High School to the counselor at Gatlinburg Pittman High School who created a program where there were more National Merit Scholars in Gatlinburg than any other town in Tennessee.
Dang.
You know, a town of less than 4,000 people, high school of 900 students, or maybe not even that many.
Probably
400 students. Yeah. So it's unbelievable, the stories. Then the stories of pioneers, the stories of women being pioneers, and really, really amazing stories. The themes of education, music, arts, and women stand out in the first 14 episodes. And we're excited about the next 14 episodes. And we keep them to about 30 or 45 minutes. And our desire is just to tell the story of why people love Gatlinburg.
I love it. And what a cool, you just reminded me of Emily and Mauricio from Hinter out in, I believe I forget what part. I think they're in Canada, but they have this like Hinter playlist that they created. So there's a couple different vibes. It could be exciting, it could be a little bit chill and, relaxed and whatever. And so based on your stay, they send you an email with a Spotify link to that playlist saying, hey, we want you to get into the the headspace, into the mood, basically before your vacation. And here's our curated playlist. What a cool way for you guys to as people are driving in. I can imagine if you got a 2-hour car ride or 3-hour car ride, whatever the distance may be from the airport, just to hit play on a podcast and listen to the stories of the destination, and kind of just automatically, without being in the destination, to be in the destination, right? Like you mentally just get taken there. So it's
interesting you say that, because this morning we got a message from an Airbnb guest who booked through Airbnb. She said, we use Airbnb all the time, but wow, you sent us a Spotify playlist. And so we have a curated list of songs as well.
Awesome.
And that is not original. Lauren Madewell with Annie Bellum's cabins in our market, a good friend. They created one, and I said, we're going to do that as well.
Shout out to Lauren.
So it's yes, absolutely. So we create a Spotify playlist and send those out to our guests as well as the podcast.
Yeah, so smart, and it just shows you the creative. I love that you say linger, because I 100%. I don't get to geek out about podcast stuff much on the show. I don't mostly geek out about hospitality and experiences and stories, but the change that we've seen in content consumption has been pretty crazy from COVID to today because of short form content, YouTube Reels, TikToks, Instagram, all the stuff, right? And so to have people be like to create the opportunity for someone to linger is actually so important, more now than ever, I think, because I don't think we linger enough. I catch myself constantly consuming content to the point of where I'm like, 3 hours went by. What am I doing with my life? I don't linger enough. And so I love that you say linger, because if you can just create an opportunity, and I think about hospitality a lot I've been thinking about hospitality a lot lately in the term of being able to kind of capture moments in a bottle. And sometimes that's way harder than not, because obviously your guests are on their own itinerary, they're on their own mission and agenda for their vacation. But what you did with the podcast and being able to create that opportunity for that moment in a bottle, where they could be in the car ride and the kids could be like, oh my gosh, I have questions about this and that. And they're like creating this family experience inside the vehicle that maybe they don't get often, because their kids are so glued to an iPad or a movie, or, maybe an angry teenager who hates the world at the moment, type situation. Yeah. So yeah, I just think to create moments is even more important now than ever, or be able to at least have that door opportunity, the slight opening of the door to create that. Did you guys expect that when creating it, or was this just kind of like, hey, let's tell the story and let's see what the impact is? Or did you guys have an assumption?
I think that was my vision from the beginning, to create a connection, an emotional, deeper connection, even in many cases a spiritual connection, and just feeling a sense of awe, a sense of rest, a sense of peace when we want people to get away. There are so many attractions here, and we're grateful for Dollywood. We love Dolly, all that she's brought to the area. But our guests do enjoy that. They'll go out with their kids to get taffy and go downtown, but they're not. That's an auxiliary item or a ancillary experience. Their main, what they tell us is, we want to eat dinner at the house. We want to look at the view. We want to sit in the hot tub. We want to just sit and watch the mountains. And it might seem really boring to do that, but our guests like to linger. And so when you add story to that, I think it's so incredibly powerful that we're human beings and we're created for story. We're brought into story with our families. And I was brought into a story.
Yeah.
We all were. And just to be able to tell those stories and to allow for people, you read a good book, it does something different to 10 different people.
Yeah.
But you can't read a good book fast. You've got to slow down. 100%. And I think we need to be reading more books and slowing down and lingering and listening to more of those stories. So.
Well, even, look at the Egyptian pyramids and the cave, where the caves where cavemen and families started, right? Like, we started telling stories there. We were writing stuff on the wall, trying to showcase the hunt or the worshiping of a sacrifice to whatever god it may have been or whatever, right? Like, we've always, as human races, have always wanted to tell stories in our own ways, whether it's through writing on the wall, through sitting around a campfire and telling ghost stories, to creating a podcast. So I think you're 100% correct. One of the questions, Tom, not to shift gears too much here, but you've talked about leadership, and you and I have had some really good personal conversations behind the scenes, not just for the pre-chat going into this recording, but I know you've been working on some stuff for VRMA, and we've been talking over the last short period of time, and leadership has come up multiple times. And one of the things I want to talk to you about is kind of the impact of. Not the impact, the current state of leaders in our industry. Something that you and I have talked about is there's a lot of people, specifically, like including myself. I, came out in the beginning of this year saying like, hey, I was really struggling with mental health, and business is not easy, right? Like, as much as we want to be glamorizing what we're creating or what we're doing, right? Like, there's been some tough times. So I'd love from your perspective, kind of on two things here. So bear with me. Part one, where do you think like the state of leadership is in our industry today? Because I know hospitality in general, not just vacation rentals, has taken a beating from COVID. I don't think it was fully recovered. I see GMs and front desk agents at hotels I walk into every day today, or not today, but every day, and see worn down, very tired, very, just not excited, and even to some vacation rental management companies. And so just kind of, where do you see the state of leadership today, and then where do you see your not state of leadership, but how has these last couple of years impacted you in the way you've led, the way you're deciding to lead moving forward? I know you're coming back from this vacation and break yourself, so hopefully it's in a positive light, but just kind of curious on where you see leadership in today's world of hospitality.
Great questions. And I hope I can do it justice. I can share it from my perspective, and also from a macro perspective of what I'm observing and what I'm hearing and seeing. And I'm very encouraged. I think after COVID, we went into a hyper growth, hyper change, hyper stress, pent up emotions, anger, fear, loneliness, isolation, work harder, pull up our bootstraps, get ourselves out of the pit, see some really glory days, see amazing ADRs, and live in this new reality. And then it plummets back to 2019 and back to reality and normal ADRs and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a whiplash experience as we kind of honestly look at the last 5 years. And I remember when COVID first hit, I had a senior in high school who missed out on prom and graduation. And
she missed out on everything.
Freshman year of college was all remote. It's just so hard emotionally. And not to mention just the health challenges. And then it led to a lot of mental and emotional challenges and so forth. But I remember sitting down with the family because, like most families, we all kind of gathered together, even though we had adult children and they kind of nested back home and were in transition. And before my daughter moved out to Denver to start her job and life. And we all just sat down because things were really tense in our home and in our family. And we're like every other family, but we also want to be different, and we want to have really honest community and relationships and conversations. And I just remember felt impressed to say, we're all really having a difficult time, and we all are having something that's creating tension, stress, anxiety in our life. And that's common ground. We're all sharing that. And we want to acknowledge that your pain and your anxiety and your stress is valid. And let's share some of what we're disappointed in and what we're sad about. So we did that 5 years ago, which I think was revolutionary for our family. I hadn't done it so much before, but a crisis led us to really having some honest conversations. And I almost think we're in that phase as an industry and in leadership. We just need to sit down and say, it's been really hard.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of disappointment. There are things you're doing in your life that you didn't think you would be doing or would want to be doing, or you're at a place that you didn't expect, that you didn't cast out the vision of saying, I want to be divorced and lose my kids and have a business crash. No one has that goal.
No.
But if we just begin to have some honest, open conversations around the table and just saying, where does it hurt? Where's the anxiety? Where's the stress? Where's the pressure? I think we began to realize that we're all kind of on the same journey. And instead of having that journey alone or being plastic fantastic and thinking everything's great and lying about your data or changing your data to make it work for you or for your owners or whatever, just say, no, it's been really challenging. And I almost think that gives a sense of allowance to say, life isn't always perfect. It is challenging. And when we're vulnerable with that, then other people begin to be vulnerable, and you begin to see some healthy community and relationships. Some people will never be vulnerable with that. And you can't wait for them, and they'll miss out on that opportunity. But what I'm sensing in the state of leadership is that that's where we are. We need to come around the table, have a meal together, and acknowledge it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's not always what we want. And even in the midst of the difficulties and the challenges, what can we have hope in? What can we lean into? And a lot of that is what, other people can pull you up out of the pit. They can, give you a sense of it's going to be all right. And I'm not going to be alone in this. For me, this time last year was a really low point for me emotionally. I had a lot of collision of finances, and we were doing a major building project. I'm in one of the houses. We developed 8 acres of land into 6 houses into a community. Of course, we then were doing the last 3 houses when the lumber costs and cement costs and everything started to increase. And we're out of budget and we're out of money. We've got to finish this thing. It's stressful. We have all this equity, but we have no cash. And so just all the tensions in that very moment were really stark. And then, coming off the rush of COVID years, 2024 was not a great year for us. It wasn't a great year for a lot of people. And it's gosh, can you stay afloat? Can we make it, going forward? And you're feeling it for your owners with inflation and utility costs going up and more people waiting so long to make their bookings. And, you're not experiencing what became reality in 21 and 22. You thought that was your new reality. It was a bit of a myth. Anyhow, so a lot of that came crashing down for me. And Wil, what I came to realize in my 59-year-old self last year, that tells you where I'm at this year, said, wow, I don't do really well at handling hard emotions. And I like to stuff things. And I like happy talk and happy news. And I like everyone else to be happy. And I worked with a good friend that brought me through, what does it look like to address difficult emotions? And I was kind of under the impression that anger, stress, anxiety are bad emotions. He's like, they're just emotions. It's like the warning light going on your car. It says, pull over. What's wrong? Why is this happening? Okay, so why do I feel anxious when an owner calls when I know that their rentals are down? Why does this totally absorb me? And to be very candid and very transparent, if anyone is listening still, to the podcast, I came to realize I have developed patterns over my lifetime, really rooted in my, initial family experience, is that I thought it was my fault and I'm not doing enough. And boy, if there's ever a treadmill to get on that you can never get off of, if every response is, it's your fault and you're not good enough. Wow. And I'm a pretty driven person. People would say you're really gifted and talented in all these areas. And so I pulled my bootstraps up and I'm going to make it through, even though I know it's my fault, or I think it's my fault, and that I'm not doing enough. But I began to unravel that at 59 and say, no, that's just not true. Those are lies. Amber Hurdle calls it Agatha or someone she calls her inner voice that just lies to her. And mine, I was just realizing, hey, that's my inner thoughts that I'm programmed to believe in, but they're not helping me out at all. And so really through a lot of therapy, friendship, really prayer, and really moving into my core identity, my core values, and not letting the waves and the winds blow me back and forth. It was about 6 months. It was kind of a low point. My wife was incredibly patient with me. When at times I was in the middle of Publix shopping, I'm like, I'm feeling really anxious and I don't know why. I have no idea where this is coming from. And so I just began to ask, I wonder why I'm anxious, as opposed to, so I just became curious in a sense, like, when we went to Morocco, I was curious. Now I was kind of curious about who I am and what is my inner lies that I'm believing that have formed and shaped my successful career.
Yeah.
And a really good job making me productive, but a really bad job of making me really address some of the harder, more difficult things. So I'm still growing. We just sat around the table for my 60th birthday with my 5 daughters, my son-in-law, my 2 grandchildren. And they said, my one daughter asked fabulous questions. And, one was, what do you want to learn from this last year? And how do you want to see growth and improvement in your life? And I think my main thing is that I want to keep growing and keep learning as a person, as a human being, as a father, as a husband, and as a leader. And maybe having those in the right order is helpful. So, own a business, it's great. But if I'm failed as a father or a husband or a friend, then the business, that doesn't really mean that much.
Yeah. Tom, can we have a really honest moment on the show? If that's all right. I really appreciate you sharing that, because there's, not to put age, numbers out there, but there's 30 years between us, and I feel very related. Like, I feel like I relate to you in a lot of the same way, because I'm going through the same kind of weird midlife change, right? Where it's like, instead of realizing, the reason why I had this ambition was because of this and this, like, no, actually I'm very avoidant. I push people away when I get too close. I'm very transparent, but when the moment I feel any type of I'm going to get hurt, I end up self-destructing and going through like a lot of weird, changes in how I live my life and my lifestyle and my relationships. And just to hear you say that, it honestly like was making me emotional, because it just is so nice to, especially as men. And I didn't have a dad who was very emotional, who I've barely seen cry my whole life. It's not easy to let that out, to showcase that and to share. So I want to say thank you, because I don't think we have these conversations. We don't linger in these conversations and these moments enough. Especially as guys. I get a lot of crap for having guys on the show, but I'm more comfortable with women. So like, to be able to have this moment and to be able to hear a man that I look up to and respect as a leader and a person, especially the man of faith, thank you for sharing that, because I think, it's so funny in this world of reflecting, or not reflecting, but showcasing what we want people to see, from LinkedIn to Instagram to, whatever highlight reel we can create online. Then open up a medium like this where we can actually sit down and talk and be quote unquote face to face, and leave these doors of conversation open to the listener, to us. To me, it just means a lot. I think it really does. I don't know I'm kind of at a loss for words, to be honest. I'm supposed to be a slick talker, but I think it's special. It's special to get to call this a job, and to get to, hear stories like yours, and to hear, just vulnerability. It means a lot. So I just want to take that moment and say thank you, because I don't think it happens enough.
I appreciate you creating the space, and also our friendship and the transparency. No idea who else we're talking to, but I feel like right now we're just talking to each other, and
100%.
and that's safe. And if this resonates with anyone else, I encourage you to seek out others and take the risk and share some of your pains. It does come at a risk, because some people cannot absorb it. They're not able to, and that's fine. But I'm sure that there are other people. I'm sensing, even from the wonderful post on LinkedIn, there's some more vulnerability. There's a crack that's coming, and I think I want to head it off before it becomes a crisis. I said I like to solve crises. I just don't want it to be my own. I like to enter into difficulty, but how can I be preemptive? And I think part of that is community and leaning into other people. And you had mentioned my work on VRMA, and I'm the co-director of the Executive Summit at the end of May. And we're really going to kind of dip into this a little bit. Definitely have great presentations and content for business, and for the finances of business, and data. But we're also going to address how do we live our grounded life, and how do we lean into our core values. And some of our speakers are off the grid from the vacation rental space. We've got some great people coming, but we've got one person coming that has created a life planner called the Monk Manual, and he studied the lives of monks. How do we live reflective lives? How do we live lives where we give ourselves the freedom to linger? And so Steve Lawson will be joining us there, and it'll be very intimate. There's just around 200 some people that will be able to attend. But I'm hoping just to introduce these type of conversations. This one might feel a little risky, because it's depending on how many people are listening, but I think you get to a point when you're 60, you're like, hey, this is who I am, and this is where I'm going. But Wil, if you can do that at 30, and you can say, this is who I want to be, and I'm going to move forward, it will lead you to 30 years more of deeper relationships and productivity and wholeness. That's my word for the year, wholeness.
I like it.
I think this is part of being whole, in having conversations like this.
Yeah. I think my word of the year might be linger. I think I might take that, because I don't linger enough. And I've just started reading books, fiction and nonfiction, this year, because I hated reading, but someone got me into a good book series, and now I'm finding books that I like, and trying to enjoy the moments of linger, and not being on my phone, and not being on my computer, and enjoying the backyard and the sunshine and the birds, and not having AirPods in my ears and all the devices around me. So my family, my wife and my daughters and son-in-law are avid readers. I am not as much of a reader. And as we sat around the table for my birthday last week, I said, I want to read more. Interestingly, I have a wealth of recommendations from them. They're good reads, 30 to 60 books a year. So they've got a great list. One book I'm reading right now, it was really capturing the sense of lingering and relationships and people. It's self-published. It's called Theo of Golden by Alan Levi. First book he's ever written. He's 70 years old. It's unbelievable. And we can learn a lot about hospitality even from this book, of what it means to linger with people. And so I'm joining a book club, and going to discuss this book and reading others. I do like to read,
but I want to read more as well.
Yeah. Well, I know you and I are very similar in the term of all in or all out. So I will keep you accountable on this, that we're both reading, and in the next year when I'm 31 and you're 61, we will make sure we are still reading at least a little bit.
That's great.
It would be great. Tom, seriously, thank you so much. This is one of my, I just love conversations like this. And I just love that we get to open up the platform to be intentional and to linger and to have honest conversation. And so for the listeners, if this is a conversation you like, obviously grab the link in the show notes for all things related to Tom and to Mountain Laurel Chalets and just what you guys are building there. We're obviously going to have the link to For the Love of Gatlinburg in there as well. And just, yeah, it means a lot to hear from the listeners when conversation like this makes an impact. So if you enjoyed it, please let us know. But Tom, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. Seriously, it means everything. It's just one of the highlights for sure.
Well, for me too, Will, and I'm looking forward to the next 30 years where we can grow in our friendship.
I can't wait. All right, Slick Talkers, you heard it here first. Grab the link in the show notes. Make sure you give Tom all the same love that you give us each and every week. And like always, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.